Good evening and welcome to Behind the Mic. I'm your host, Jonathan Hodgson, back with you for another conversation with the sportscaster. We have a big show lined up for you this evening, and we're going to dive into everything Vancouver Giants with our pair of guests this evening. Giants radio play-by-play voice and media relations director Dan O'Connor stops by for the full hour, and we'll be joined in our second segment by 20-year-old forward Eric Flerchuk. We'll talk to both of them about how their season is going in the WHL's BC Division hub in Kelowna and Kamloops. And also with Dan, we'll revisit some of his highlights from his sportscasting career, which has taken him to two different stops in the Western Hockey League, as well as stops in Junior B and Junior A hockey before reaching the dub. So we look forward to the stories and a little bit of shop talk with Dan. So you're in for a fun show, a lot of hockey talk, great stories, and maybe a few laughs. So before we go and head to our first break and bring in Dan on the other side, we'll remind you that you can find all of our shows on astvproductions.com as well as Facebook. That's where we simulcast our shows live. And on the website is where you can find all the archives of Behind the Mic and all of our other ASTV shows and live game broadcasts. Thanks for spending part of your Friday night with us. We'll take a quick break here and we'll be on the other side. On the other side, we'll get this started with Dan O'Connor. Back now on Behind the Mic, Jonathan Hodgson along with you, joined now by our first guest this evening, along for the whole show tonight, Dan O'Connor, the play-by-play voice of the Vancouver Giants. Dan, thanks so much for coming on with us tonight.
It's an absolute pleasure, Jonathan, and I'm glad after several months of tweeting back and forth with one another that finally we were able to connect and make this show happen. Happy to do it, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Very grateful that you would spend part of your Friday night with us as well, and looking forward to diving into the Giants and the WHL. But as you mentioned, there's been some back and forth getting this set. And you and I have, I'm not sure if we knew it at the time, but we've crossed paths in the hallways of the Save on Foods Memorial Center in Victoria the last few years, as I've been starting to follow the team and cover the team there and become friends with your broadcast partner, Bill Wilms. So the chance to finally formally connect is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I've got a few games to go to catch up with Bill as far as his experience, and I've probably got a lot of friends to go to catch up with the amount of friends that he has. But no, again, it's exciting to connect, and I think that any chance that we can have, especially these days, to put faces to faces and to talk about things that aren't just related to COVID-19 and some of the sad stuff that's going on out there in our world. It's been a remarkable breath of fresh air the last 2 months to have hockey games to talk about and to have a little something to kind of dive headfirst into. I know I can speak for everybody involved, I think, in the WHL when I say that it has been just a real breath of fresh air and a real blessing to have it.
Yeah, and how much And taking you back to the start of the BC Division Hub at the end of March, how much anticipation was there from you personally to get back in a rink and throw the headset back on and call live hockey? How much buildup was there for that first game?
Yeah, you know what? There was a lot of buildup, and for us in BC, it was different because if I recall, it was really late February when the Alberta division got started, and then after that, it was the East division was approved, and then the US division was approved, and so you've got 3 of the 4 that were given the green light to go, and I remember all of us waiting just with bated breath. There would be Fridays where I would go to the rink, like our practice rink, and the coach would be there, the GM would be there, the trainer would be there, and we would all kind of sit distance from one another and think like, okay, when is it going to be our turn? Why do these guys get to have all the fun and we're still sitting in this limbo? And then, I'll never forget it when we finally learned that, okay, we were good to go. It was one of those things where I think we found out on a Tuesday afternoon around 3:00 that we'd been granted the return to play go ahead, and that, from there, everything just went so fast and so furious. And then it was, okay, Dan, you've got 2 weeks to essentially get all of your affairs in order. And then you're going to go into this hub bubble type scenario. And for 61 days or whatever the number is, you're going to be just knee deep in hockey again after not being at a rink and after not calling a game for the better part of an entire full calendar year. So it came fast. It came suddenly. And yet it was just such a shot in the arm for everybody. And the preparation, the Zoom calls, the anticipation, and then finally to, get to Kamloops and to, we were quarantining in our hotel rooms for about 5 days. And then when our second batch of negative COVID tests came back, that first feeling of getting a chance to go outside and to see the players again face to face and to see everybody face to face again, really for the first time in over a year. It sounds very strange, but it was a really cool moment and one that I don't think I'll ever forget.
Yeah, and from there might be some fans and some observers on the outside that might look at a slate of 24 games with no fans, with now it's official, no playoffs, and there might be some people looking at it a little bit skeptically, like, why, what are the players going to get out of this? And this is something that we'll ask Eric about in our second block. But what do you think the value is for these players to have the chance to get back on the ice and to get as much action in as they can this year?
I will try to answer this question somewhat quickly, but to me, Jonathan, there are so many reasons why this matters for players. And if we want to use just the Vancouver Giants as an example, well, okay, let's do that. Tristan Nielsen, 20-year-old, playing for an NHL contract. Alex Kanek-Liepert, Eric Florchuk, the fellow 20-year-olds, they are also auditioning, whether it's for a pro hockey contract, whether it's for CIS and university opportunities. The fact that they get 24 games to play, the fact that they get to be around their teammates, and the fact that they are going to get a proper send-off, or maybe not a fully proper send-off with fans and cheering and adulation, but they get the send-off that David Tendick and Milos Roman and Tyler Prezuzzo didn't get last season when the season was halted abruptly because of COVID-19. So first thing that comes to mind for me is the 20-year-olds. Secondly, if you want to talk about guys that are already drafted that are trying to get contracts, Trent Miner, Justin Sordiff, 2 players who statistically have been aces for the Vancouver Giants in this hub season. Justin Sordiff is a third-round draft pick who's playing like a first-round draft pick right now. He's leading the BC Division Hub in scoring. I think he's made the Florida Panthers look really smart, and he's made 30 other teams in the NHL look really stupid for not picking him far sooner than 87th overall. His game has always been impressive, but he's on another level this season. We wouldn't know that without a 24-game BC Hub Division season. And then you've got the younger players, whether it's Zach Ostapchuk, who's trying to get drafted, whether it's young goaltender like Drew Sim, who's figuring out on the go what it's like to be a goaltender day in, day out in the Western Hockey League, whether you're a 15-year-old defenseman, now he's 16, named Mazden Leslie, who, if this were an ordinary season, he'd get to play 5 games with the Giants as an underager. He's played a lot more than that, but he's scored 5 goals, and he has made a wonderful impact on the team's blue line. And think of how much further ahead he's going to be in his development as a 16-year-old next year because of this experience, familiarizing yourself with your teammates, familiarizing yourself with the coaching staff. I mean, those are just 5 or 6 examples of 24 that I could give you as to why this season matters and is so important for these players and to the league officials, the health officials, the ownership, the people that are funding all of this. A sincere thank you to them for allowing all of this to take place for these players.
For sure. And as far as wins and losses go, the Giants, as of tonight, 9-7, coming off of a 4-3 setback last night. And before that, the Giants came out quick, 9-3, before this little skid they're on right now. And a big part of that fast start was, of course, your goaltender, the Giants goaltender, Trent Miner, who came out of the gates with 3 straight shutouts. How impressive was that to see after such a long layoff for a goaltender, which must be difficult, must be a challenge to get back in the flow after such a long layoff, to start with 3 blank slates?
Well, I mean, Trent Miner, I mean, again, I'm going to try and keep this answer somewhat quick for you, but I've got all the time in the world for Trent Miner, the human, and all the time in the world for Trent Miner, the goaltender. During COVID, I think we all developed hobbies. We all, learned to cook a new dish, or we started a podcast, or we ran marathons, or whatever we did to kind of pass the time. Well, Trent Miner got his pilot's license. I mean, that's the kind of kid that he is. And he was doing that while putting in time at the rink and stopping pucks. And then he goes to the American Hockey League on an ATO with the Colorado Eagles. He plays in 6 games. He wins 2 of them. He gets a shutout in 1 of them. And I kid you not, when it came time for this season to start for the Giants, the Colorado franchise, the Colorado Eagles, did not want to send him back to us. They had to. And I'm saying that a little bit tongue in cheek, but I know that there was some joking conversation saying, are you sure we can't keep him? And this is a 19-year-old 7th round drafted goaltender who's starting in the American Hockey League and instilling confidence in his teammates and his management and staff at the pro hockey level. So then he comes back and he goes on this remarkable run of shutout hockey to start this season. He sets a new franchise record, and he fell about a period and a half short of the all-time WHL shutout streak record. So, I mean, the confidence that he continues to play with is crazy, and you can just see the trickle-down effect that when the guys are playing in front of them, it's easy to breathe easier when your goaltender is playing like that. And just the way he leads, the way he works, the way he practices. I hope he signs a contract soon. And it feels weird to say this, but I hope that at 20 years old next season, he's not with the Vancouver Giants. I hope that he's playing in the American Hockey League or the East Coast Hockey League, getting paid to play the game and starting the next chapter of his hockey career, because in my mind, I can't think of anybody more deserving just based on what he's been able to accomplish.
Absolutely. And you mentioned off the top of the show how busy it's been from your perspective, calling what's going to be 24 games in about a month and a half from late March to mid-May. And something that I was wondering about from your perspective and your experience, you're, of course, the play-by-play broadcaster on the radio, and you're also the media relations director. Now, take us inside what your day-to-day duties are like this season, as opposed to a normal season, and kind of what take the curtain back a little bit to what your duties look like right now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a few different things, and while I say this, I'll let you know that Eric Florchuk is texting me, and he says he's having a bit of difficulty joining the conversation. So maybe we can troubleshoot that together here in a second, Jonathan. But
sure.
Okay. Well, you know what? There's the cherry on top of the job, which is doing the play-by-play and calling the games. For the Vancouver Giants on the radio and on the webcast. But there's a communications piece, writing the pregame previews on the website, doing the postgame recap on the website, doing all sorts of media requests so that when the Jonathan Hodgsons of the world want to talk to Eric Florchuk, well, I field those requests daily. And, we have a lot of fun, the Vancouver Giants are fighting a daily battle to try and get exposure and get coverage, because in Vancouver, love it or not, the Canucks are king. So anytime we can, showcase our players on TV, on radio, in print, and even if it's just generating our own media, it's huge to just keep our brand out there. And so spending some time just doing interviews with these players and having some fun with them in that aspect has been a big part of the job. And then further to that, for the past 7 or so years in junior hockey, I've helped out a lot with the travel and the team services component. So booking hotel rooms, booking meals, helping out just organizing team activities. Michael Dick and Barclay Parnetta kind of joked with me at the start of this thing saying, Dan, we're going to need you to be a bit of a camp director of sorts. So during downtime, especially during quarantine, what can we do to play games with these guys? What can we do to kind of keep them upbeat and positive? So whether it's a name that tune or whether it's some sort of interactive trivia contest against one another, we've been creative as far as making sure that nobody's bored and making sure that people are enjoying this experience as much as possible. So from organizing the occasional meal to being in daily contact with the hotel about just various odds and ends about the stay, scheduling the daily ice times and just all of those kind of components. I mean, the thing you realize working in junior hockey is that just because your business title says one thing doesn't mean that that's your only area. Jack of all trades, master of none is sort of how I feel, or maybe I don't want to sell myself short, but maybe jack of all trades, master of two. But it hasn't been boring, that's for sure.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, we have Eric lined up for the next segment, so we're going to step aside and take a quick break here. And when we come back, more with Dan O'Connor, and we'll be joined by Vancouver Giants forward Eric Florchuk when we come back here on Behind the Mic on ASTV Productions.
as he has it against Zane Franklet. Justin Sordiff behind the net. Florchuk and Byram with him. He'll drop for Florchuk. 30 seconds to go in overtime. Florchuk has a bit of a lane. He's going to cut in. Florchuk to the backhand, scores! Overtime winner for Eric Florchuk. He goes wide and to the backhand. And what a finish. The Giants have solved the Kamloops Blazers. And in overtime, they win the game by a 5-4 score. What a goal. And it was Sordiff to Florchuk, and he turned on the Jets.
That was Dana on the call last January 31st. As our next guest, Eric Florchuk, called game against the Kamloops Blazers. Dan, we were talking off air that you remember that call very well. Eric, welcome to the show. Do you remember that goal? Oh, you might be muted there.
Just got to get you.
Nothing yet. Live TV.
Yeah, bottom of your screen. Is there a mute? Is there a mute button there for you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm going to use the comments, the internal comments. About this, everybody. We'll get this figured out in a second. Makes for great TV.
Oh, what's he saying to me? Oh, his computer just decided to restart.
Oh, okay.
Well. Oh.
All right. So we'll let him. No worries. We'll let him reboot and try to add him in here in a moment or two. But Dan, if you could just keep in contact with him, and if you need anything from me, just let me know. But we'll keep going on that thought from that highlight we showed to bring us into to this segment. Eric's overtime winner against Kamloops last January. What do you remember about that game and that call?
Well, I mean, that's like when the Giants acquired Eric Florchuk, and this is I can't wait for him to get back in the conversation because it'd be cool for him to hear this. But right around the trade deadline, back in January of 2020, the Vancouver Giants were in a bit of a flux. Were they going to be buyers at the deadline? Were they going to be sellers? The BC division was just a bit of a weird time. Oh.
Flores, are you there?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're there.
Sorry about that. My computer just did a complete restart there on me. I'm back. I'm back now. At least you guys can hear me too.
I appreciate you coming on.
No worries.
So that clip we played to bring you in at the start of this segment, do you remember that goal?
Clearly. I think I always will. I think that was kind of one of the big goals I scored as a Giant last year, and that's probably one I won't forget for sure. That was an awesome game, and I won't forget it. Great call by Dano, and the team was going after.
And Dan, I want to get back to what you were saying before Eric re-entered about the place the Giants were in last season at the time of Eric's acquisition.
So we acquired Eric at the trade deadline. We had a game in Spokane on his birthday, the second time that he's been traded on his birthday, I might add, January 10th. We acquired Eric, and as I mentioned, there was a lot of uncertainty at the time of like, okay, like, are we buyers? Are we sellers? What are the Vancouver Giants? And Eric comes in, and it took a couple of weeks, but about 2 weeks after he arrived, we went on an 11-game winning streak. And it started on the 25th of January, and it continued well into about late February. So that overtime winner that he scored, January 31st against the Kamloops Blazers, a huge win for us to keep our streak alive. But when we brought Eric in, and some other moves as well, Tyler Prezzuzo and Trevor Longo, a couple of other veterans that were acquired, the culture of the Vancouver Giants shifted on a dime. And it's just one of those things where you put all of the right puzzle pieces together, and it just was a remarkable fit. He played great. The team played great. And it took the Giants from like a team hovering around the 500 mark, from fourth in the BC division to second in the division in the span of 2 months. And Eric played a huge part in that.
33 points in 25 games, 10 goals in that stretch last year after coming over from Saskatoon. And I remember a nice performance in Victoria, and you looked at me after the game and said, well, I guess I'll see you in the playoffs. Of course, that unfortunately couldn't happen. But Eric, what was it from your perspective that clicked for you personally when you got to Vancouver? And to what Dan was saying, why do you think things came together so well for your team?
Going back to what Dan was saying, I just think, it took a little while to get things going. I mean, we acquired Prezzuzo and Longo early December, just before the Christmas break, and I think some atmosphere in the room started to change there. And then I got traded at the deadline, and coming into a new team, new faces, all of a sudden after Christmas, it's a little hard to kind of get used to everyone right away out of the get-go. So first 2 weeks, I think we took some time just getting to know each other and how each other plays, and I think that played a very big part in our success down the road there. And I think going on to that, I think it was good for me, I think, to kind of get those early games in for those 2 weeks before we kind of went on a roll. And again, touching on what Daniel said and what you said, it was unfortunate that the season ended short, because I think the Giants were ready to go last year. I think we were all excited to have a good playoff push, and it was unfortunate that it was ended short.
Yeah, unfortunately, in mid-May, things had to be cut short, and then that long layoff that everybody had to find a way to get through. What were you able to do during that 9 or so months off to stay active and stay productive during that layoff?
It was tough being Alberta. They had quite a few lockdowns, so the rinks and that was closed. But for the most part, we I guess when it was open, I was always on the ice, and when I wasn't, I was at home working out. So that was kind of the tough part about being in Alberta. Just the ice, the rinks weren't open all the time. But I think last few months I made a move out early to BC to get on the ice here to prepare myself for this bubble.
And so how much anticipation was there for the restart, or for the start of the hub season and that first game to get back into competitive action?
It was long overdue. End of the year ended, and then we were told, probably get back or up and going October, then it was November, then December, then January, and just kept seeming like it was going to get pushed back. We weren't even going to have a season. So looking back, and here we are now, I think we're all grateful enough to be able to play this year. So I think the anticipation building up before the start of the year was very high.
And I was talking with Dan in the first block about a little bit about how you guys have done this year with the the hot start at 9-3. A little bit of a rough patch right now with four straight setbacks, but 3 of them by 1 goal. Overall, how would you assess how your team has done on the ice so far this year, and how do you feel about your own game?
As a team, I think we've done good. We've done really good, I think, considering the circumstances we've all been in. It's been a little tough the last 4 games. I think we all know that, but at the same time, we on the Giants roster know that we've been in each of these last 4 games. When our goaltender's stood on his head, and then the other 3 we've been 1 break away from winning or tying the game. So I mean, it's part of the game of hockey, and hopefully we can bounce back tomorrow night and get things back in the right column. I think those 2 points tomorrow night would be huge against Victoria, and hopefully carry on into our game Sunday against PG. And individually, it's been a weird year for sure, but I can't really worry too much about that. I think the individual success will come with team success. So I think we get back on track tomorrow night. The individual success will come.
So with the conditions that you guys have put on you during the hub as far as lifestyle and stuff, due to COVID measures, what's your team able to do on an off day or in your downtime to kind of get your mind off of hockey for a little bit?
Some guys have brought their video game consoles to keep them entertained that way, but for the most part, guys are making use of our team room where we got some foosball table, ping pong table. We play the odd poker game, and then if we got some
little bit of crib as well.
Oh yeah, crib. Yeah, I've been being down pretty bad at crib lately, so hopefully that keeps going. But but as of late, with the nice weather we've had out here in Kamloops, we've been able to kind of get outside at the rink and play some activities down there.
Now, you guys and I believe everybody in the division have been bouncing between Kamloops and Kelowna. How does that look when you guys have gone between the 2 rinks? Are you stationed in one place and you go to whichever rink for game time, or how does that work?
I can handle this one, Flo. Yeah. I mean, we Kamloops is our home base. We sleep here every single night, and really our area is kind of confined to the hotel, the rink, and there's a beautiful park, kind of kitty corner to the rink, where if you want to go and stretch your legs and go for a walk, you can do that. But then when it comes time to go to Kelowna, I mean, we go to the rink, we pack up the gear, and the bus is waiting for us. We go straight from the rink, straight to the bus. The bus drops us off at the side door of Prospera Place. There's one way in, there's one way out. You go in, you play your game, you get your food delivered to the bus after the game. You either eat quickly inside at a designated little eating space at the rink, or you grab your pizza, you get back on the bus, and you're back by about midnight after a 7:00 game. So it's all very compartmentalized, but very efficient, and above all else, it's extremely safe.
And the WHL has done a great job for the most part in all of the divisions to make sure that the 24 games goes off. And as I was talking to Dan about in the first block, from his viewpoint, Eric, I wanted to get a player's perspective on the meaning of this season, of being able to get 24 games in for everybody in the league. There may be some fans and some outside observers that might look skeptically a little bit at, 24 games, no fans, no playoffs, what are they doing there? But take us into a player's mind, and just how important is this to get this slate of games in this year?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, I think every player across the league is grateful and fortunate enough to be able to play this year. I mean, you look at CIS, the Ontario Hockey League, they didn't even get a game in this year. And I think looking down the stretch, it'd be, I think a lot of us would be wondering or asking ourselves, what else would we be doing right now if we weren't able to play? So I think if it's being a 20-year-old like myself, it being a last year, 24 games, it is what it is, but you got to make the most of it. I'm grateful to be able to at least play a 20-year-old year. I think even if it's a guy's draft year, you know what, they got 24 games to impress going forward, and if not, it's just a year to develop and get better and carry it into next year. And I think that's the biggest thing is just it's a huge year for a lot of people, and I think everyone at the same time is very grateful.
Joined by Dan O'Connor and Eric Florchuk. Eric, just a couple of more, and then we'll let you get on with your evening. But you mentioned this being your 20-year-old year, and you're wearing an A for the Giants this season. What do you think you bring your club as a leader now? And do you remember those days breaking in with Victoria? And did you have veterans who are ahead of you that helped you break in?
Yeah, I'll never forget the leadership I've had coming into the league. I still talk to those guys even now. So, they've left a good impression on me, and I hope I can do the same for the young guys coming into the Giants organization this year. I think that's the biggest thing is just setting a good example on and off the ice and doing my best to just lead by example and be approachable if they have any questions or whatever it may be.
And I have an idea what the answer might be like for this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. With 8 games left in that 20-year-old season, have you began to give any thought to the end of your WHL career and what you might look back on, what your takeaways might be, or is that is it not time for that yet?
It's been approaching ever since game 1. The reality is I got 6 games left now, and I think looking back, there's been a lot of good memories and friendships made over the course of the years, so I'll never forget those times and those friendships.
And I know that a big reason why I wanted to get you on here once I got Dan on was you and I have crossed paths a couple of times in previous years, thanks to our buddy Scott Walford. Caught up with you guys when you guys were both playing in Saskatoon, and then from then on, I would catch up with you, or at least cross paths in the hallways in Victoria, and you're always a friendly face to see, and one of those people that encouraged me to really got me hooked on the WHL. So I wanted to have one more chance to catch up with you and talk a little hockey and say thanks and congrats on everything.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break here. We'll say goodbye to Eric. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back on the other side with one more segment with Vancouver Giants play-by-play man Dan O'Connor.
That's a tough act to follow right there.
Why go solar? Solar is better than ever. Our revolutionary design and inverter equipment with the latest in solar panel technology for the ultimate in-home and business security. That's right, I said security. Grid security and security of your home are linked. Fortify your future today with a battery backup system. No maintenance, quiet running. Did you know in Manitoba, grid-connected, off-grid, and battery backup systems are 100% right off in the year you purchase for any company or farm? Do you want to back up your internet, keep your tills running, and the lights on? We can install a system that is right for you with battery backup fully capable of taking on all those essential loads and keeping you running. When you call our experts at Evolve Green, ask about getting your free energy audit today. Call or email today to find out what system works best for you. 1-866-5EVOLVE or support@evolvegreen.ca. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.evolvegreen.ca.
And welcome back to Behind the Mic, rolling on with Dan O'Connor from the Vancouver Giants. Very grateful to be joined by Eric Florchuk in the last segment to talk a little bit about the Giants season and his Western Hockey League career that's wound down. And Dan, you've had the opportunity to call Eric's games with him as a member of the Giants. And of course, when he was in Saskatoon and came up in Victoria, how have you seen Florzy grow over the years as a player and now getting to know him as a person?
I'm a big fan of Eric Florchuk, the player and the person. You know what I mean? I think with the younger Eric Florchuk, I mean, I remember him being a youngster on some really good Victoria Royals teams. And sometimes when you're a young player and you're on a team that has some championship hopes, you get caught in the crossfire a little bit as far as you know, you're playing down in the lineup, and when it's time to go out and make a big splash and make a big trade, you're the one that sometimes has to go. And you know, I remember when Eric was traded to Saskatoon, I remember thinking, ooh, like kind of happy you're not going to have to be dealing with that guy as an opponent. You know, when he's 18, 19, and 20 years old in the BC division, because I mean, you knew he was a talented player, and he was on draft boards and eventually did get drafted by the Washington Capitals. And, again, kind of circling back to segment one, I mean, when we acquired Eric Florchuk, I'll be honest, at very first glance, when we got him, I knew he was a good player, but he'd been out east. His numbers were good, but I wouldn't say that they were like, hold the phone, we just got that guy. And then you spend 5 minutes talking to him and you see how down to earth and how humble and how hardworking he is. And I don't think there's any coincidence whatsoever that when Eric Florchuk joined the Vancouver Giants, the culture improved in just leaps and bounds. Quiet leader, respected by his coaches, respected by his management, respected in the community. He looks you in the eye when he's speaking to you, and he's a gamer on the ice. And, again, he spoke a little bit erroneously. Our crib games have been a little more even than maybe he alluded to when in his segment. But, part of this job, and one of the really gratifying parts about it, is you do get to know these guys and they become friends. And I can say with the utmost confidence that Eric Florchuk is a friend and someone who I just feel very strongly is going to go on to have a great life. And, whether it's in hockey, whether it's doing something completely different, he's a guy that I'd want on my staff. He's a guy that I would want in my life. He's a guy that I would want on my hockey team. No question.
Echo those sentiments for sure. I wanted to ask you a non-hockey question here as we spend the rest of our time kind of getting into your story, your life in hockey and your sportscasting journey. But I want to start with baseball.
Okay.
You list on your Twitter profile that you've been to 18 major league ballparks.
Correct. And I know
you a sneaky big baseball guy?
I wouldn't even say I'm a sneaky big baseball guy. I would say I wear it as a badge of honor. We'll be in the meal room and we'll be kind of kibitzing away. Coaches will be chatting about video, and I'll have my computer open and I'll be working on my game notes, and I'll have the Toronto Blue Jays game in the background. I will usually, if they're on TV, even if I can only catch about 5 minutes of a game before I go off to the next thing, I'm usually pretty dialed in to what they're doing and what's going on. But yeah, you know what? Hockey will always be love number one, but I pull no punches about it. Baseball is an extremely close second.
That's great stuff. And for me, it's kind of, I feel like for me, it's the opposite. Where I grew up in baseball, I had basically my dream job as a play-by-play broadcaster in baseball at 16, and kind of lived that life. And when I moved out to Victoria was when I started going to Royals games, and met Griffin outside of hockey, and he started bringing me into it, and I started to know what was going on and appreciate it and meet a few more guys. And next thing you know, hockey is kind of my 1B pursuit now, next to baseball. So it's a valuable thing, I think, for people pursuing a life in sports, to have, to be versatile and to have, at least two different sports that you can do.
Well, I think so, and I mean, I've done minimal baseball broadcasting over the course of my life, but I mean, I think even just to have other interests and other hobbies in life. I mean, I love hockey. I follow the NHL, of course. I follow the Western Hockey League very closely, but there are times where I get a bit hockeyed out sometimes. And I think that it's important to have something else that you can watch, have something else that you can go and do, have something that you can talk about with your friends that isn't just all hockey all the time. And the baseball love. I mean, I've been fortunate to go on some baseball trips with my wife, and a lot of them have been with my dad. We'll pick a few stadiums every year, and we'll go and we'll tick off some stadiums and go and enjoy places like Kansas City or Baltimore or Chicago and New York, Boston. The list goes on, and you meet great people. You get to great food, great beer, great entertainment, and got 12 more parks to go to get to all 30. And God, here's hoping that we can get back to travel here before too long, and I can start ticking off a few more ballparks off the old bucket list.
I could go all day with you on that, but we'll keep it moving. I wanted to go back to your formative time, getting going in, your foundations to get going in sportscasting and making sports a regular part of your life. For any sportscaster will have people that they listen to early on, will have somebody that inspired them or caught their interest. Who were the people, who were the sportscasters that you listened to maybe as a kid, that drew you to the game, and maybe put that thought in your mind that maybe I would like to do that?
Well, I mean, growing up in Vancouver, or just outside of Vancouver in Tsawwassen, I was spoiled because we had Jim Robson doing radio play-by-play for the Canucks. And it started with Jim Robson, and if we were going out for dinner on a Friday night as a family, we'd have the Canuck game on the radio. If my dad and I were downstairs playing ball hockey together, we'd have the Canuck game on the radio while we played. And then, you watch on TV, and, Jim Hewson started calling Canuck games, and then John Shorthouse. And then you start to really dive in, and you get to the national level, and Chris Cuthbert, who was so versatile calling hockey and calling football. So I mean, gosh, there were so many from an NHL standpoint that made me sort of fall in love with the play-by-play aspect. And then, as you get a little bit older and you start to kind of familiarize yourself a little bit more with the junior aspect. I mean, thank goodness we had a WHL team called the Vancouver Giants, from grade 11 onward for me. So was fortunate enough to make some inroads with the organization and forge some friendships and some professional, relationships that still remain in many cases to this day. But, Jim Robson, Jim Hewson, John Shorthouse, Chris Cuthbert, I would say, without overthinking it, were four hockey broadcasters that always kind of inspired me and made me want to pursue it. And then as I got a little older, you listen to people like Gary Thorne call games on the American networks, and Doc Emmerich. Have to give respect credit where credit's due to Bob Cole as well. I mean, we've been so spoiled with great broadcasters, and I'd like to think that there's something to be gained from all of them.
Absolutely. And your first two stops, as you mentioned, you kind of developed that love for junior hockey. Your first two stops in junior hockey after a couple of different stops for schooling was Junior B in Dawson Creek and the Saskatchewan Junior League with the Battleford's North Stars. What do you remember about that time in your life, venturing out, formally getting into junior hockey for the first time, and getting into those to those towns? What do you remember most about those times?
I remember being just scared beyond belief when my dad drove away from Chetwynd and I was on my own for the first time. Starting my career in this small community called Chetwynd, British Columbia, that had 3,000 people living in it. I was making zero money. Like I got a paycheck, but by the time, after you paid your rent, paid your cell phone bill, and put a case of beer in the fridge, there wasn't a whole lot left over. And yet in so many ways, I felt like the wealthiest guy in town because, every weekend I'd get in my car, I'd drive the hour down the highway with my good buddy Marcus Fitzgerald, and we would call Dawson Creek Junior Canuck games in the Northwest Junior Hockey League. And, you get to know a coaching staff, you get to know the players. And at that point in time, the players were the same age as me because I was only 21 and there were, 8 or 9 20-year-olds on this team. So, after games, we'd end up at the same restaurants or we'd end up at the same pubs. So that was kind of fun. And you know what, like just cutting your teeth in a small radio station, kind of back to the old thing I said in segment 1 about how, when you're part of a radio station or you're part of a junior hockey team, you don't have just one job. You've probably got about 6 or 7. But I learned the business. You learn various components about yourself and just inner office dynamics and just all of these things. And then, a year later, I find myself in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. The first time I ever went to Saskatchewan was for my job interview. I never stepped foot in Saskatchewan until I went to interview for this job. And I'll try to be quick again, but I spent 4 years working for a radio station in North Battleford called CJNB. And I can't express enough thanks to Saskatchewan and that experience for, I think, really molding me and kind of setting me on the path that I'm currently on as we speak. I had a boss that I don't think no was a part of his vocabulary. If I went to him and said, hey, like, can I start a sports show that we can run on Monday nights? Sure, Dan, go for it. Hey, the North Stars won 5 games. They're not in the playoffs. So what if I did some play-by-play for the senior hockey playoffs? Yeah, sure, Dan, go. Just a place where I was able to spread my wings and just made so many friends. The North Stars, I'm happy to report, got a lot better in the seasons to come. And you know what? Got to spend 3 years with a great guy by the name of Ken Pearson, who was the head coach of the North Stars, and calling playoff hockey and having your heart ripped out in Game 6 of the North Final in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, and again, just learning how junior hockey works and learning about reading the room. And if the bus is quiet, keep your mouth shut. If the bus is jovial and loving life after a win, then hey, have at her and have fun with it. Leaving Saskatchewan was way tougher than I think a lot of people realize, because at the time we just had such a great staff, a really good situation in Saskatchewan, and a time in my life that I treasure even all these years later.
And you're after Saskatchewan, you made the jump to the WHL, and your first stop there was with the Prince George Cougars. How much of a challenge was that for you? And by the way, there's a great documentary that was made by Caden Fanshaw that details your journey excellently. So would definitely recommend going back and watching that. But when you went to made the jump to the WHL first with the Prince George Cougars, how much of a challenge was that, and where was your focus at when you went to PG?
You know what? The early years in Prince George had their challenges for sure, and yet without challenge, I don't think there can be triumph. And year one, we lost a lot of games. The crowd support wasn't great. The culture, I think, with the Prince George Cougars was at a real tipping point. And there were definitely a few times in year one where I'd be lying awake at night looking at the ceiling thinking, what did I get myself into? You're the new guy. And I'll say this about the WHL, it can chew you up and spit you out very quickly if you're not adaptable, and if you try to cut corners. This league is as pro as it gets without being pro, and I say that complimentary. But you know what? You stick with it, and all of a sudden you're starting to win more games. All of a sudden you're starting to feel a little more familiar. When you go to Red Deer, you know where the booth is. When you go to Victoria, you know where you're eating after the game. When you go to Saskatoon, you know where the broadcast booth is. And, you start to get to know the management a little bit. They get to know your skill set. You get to know their personalities. And, it took a little bit, but even in the early years when we weren't making the playoffs, I look back on some of those years so fondly now because they were really important as far as shaping me and really allowing me to become, I think, the broadcaster that I am today. And I mean, Dallas Thompson, Brandy Brodsky, Mark Hollick, who I host a podcast with now, Jason Becker, Chico D'Angelo, who's in my wedding party. Some really influential people early in Prince George who really helped me early on. And then as things went on and Todd Harkins became the GM, Richard Matvichuk then became the head coach, Steve O'Rourke, Bob Simmons, the new ownership group with Greg Pocock and his, 5 business partners, Andy Beasley in the office. I can't say enough about my 6 years in Prince George. From a professional standpoint, I wouldn't trade it for the world. From a life standpoint, I mean, I met my wife there. I still consider it to be a home away from home. Friendships, just community support. I genuinely root for the Prince George Cougars as long as they're not playing against the Vancouver Giants. I'm so humbled and blessed and grateful for the wins, the losses, the struggles, and the triumphs that all accompanied that 6-year stint in Prince George. I can't say enough good things.
And we'll run just a few minutes over the 1 hour mark if you have time for it, Dan.
Sure. Yeah, you bet.
I want to make sure I respect your time. But in the WHL, you've been the voice of 2 pretty special seasons. The 2016-17 division title for the Cougars, and then the 2018-19 championship series appearance by the Giants. What made each of those seasons special, and were there moments that you were a part of, or were there players that you got to call on those runs that are really going to stand out for you?
Again, I feel like my line for every question you've asked me here, Jonathan, is I'll try to keep this somewhat quick and concise. 2016-17 for Prince George. We had been building for that season for quite some time. 2 years prior, there were 4 players at age 17 that got drafted to the NHL: Jansen Harkins, Brad Morrison, Sam Ruopp, Tate Olson. Ty Edmonds was a goaltender that I think could have been drafted. Then, you make a few trades and you bring in, players like Jesse Gabriel and, Colby McCauley is a year older. Cody McDonald is a year older. And I think in 2015-16, things were really heading in the right direction. And then unfortunately, right after Christmas, I think just travel and a few other obstacles just kind of reared their ugly head. And it was a quick exit from the playoffs against a really good Seattle team. And I feel like, to a man, everybody felt like with 2016-17 in Prince George that there was some unfinished business. And I remember starting the season, we had 8 guys at NHL camps and thinking like, ooh, okay, like we've got a doubleheader with Victoria. We don't have any bodies. Like, what are we going to do? Well, we won both. Then we went to Vancouver and won. Then we went to Kelowna and won. All of a sudden, we're 4-0. You go home. You have Kelowna in town for 2 games. We won them both. Then Vancouver comes to town. We won them both. And then all of a sudden, you're 8-0. The Prince George Cougars had never been 8-0. All of a sudden, these CHL rankings that are released every week. What? We are ranked number 1 in the nation? The Prince George Cougars? Like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because, like, this just wasn't a thing for so many years in Prince George. And as the season went on, this was a really cool day when the Giants acquired Brendan Gooley in a trade with the Prince Albert Raiders. What was cool about it is that the Raiders were doing their BC Division road trip, and Gooley was going to play the final game of that trip against us, and then we were going to announce the trade after the game. So we end up winning that game. And during the post-game show, Todd Harkins, the GM, comes up. We're doing the post-game show in front of fans, and he gives me the thumbs up. And I'm on my laptop. I hit send on a tweet, and I got to break the news at 10 o'clock that night that the Prince George Cougars had just acquired Brendan Gooley, like NHL signed prospect with the Buffalo Sabres. And it kind of right then and there, we all felt like, okay, we've got a team that can win it all. And, a few more trades made, bringing in Nikita Papagayev and Radovan Bondra. And then, we win the BC Division. It's the only banner that hangs from the rafters at the CN Center. And it was just an incredible moment being able to call that division victory and, being a part of a team that finally was able to bring a banner to Prince George after 21 years in existence was special. And I'll never forget it. We should have beat Portland in that series, round 1. I think, a number of factors. And look, I mean, Mike Johnston is a hell of a coach. Cody Glass was a hell of a 17-year-old. And sometimes favored teams lose in round number 1. And it was just unfortunate, I think, that Portland was just, of all the teams we could have matched up against in round 1, Portland was probably the team that none of us wanted to play. But we did, and we lost, and that's life, and that's hockey. But a special year that I'll never forget. And then 2018-19 with the Vancouver Giants. I honestly, very similar. A lot of unfinished business. That 7-game series the year before with the Victoria Royals. The Victoria Royals on paper, what a hockey team. And they deserved to win the series, but I thought we could have won it. And there were definitely times I thought we should have, but we didn't. So to training camp we go, and there's a new general manager. There's a new head coach. And man, oh man, there was just this focus from the word go at training camp that year. Now, that team wasn't a superstar-laden team. I mean, we didn't have a 100-point scorer. We didn't have a power play that was just this vaunted juggernaut. What we had was a 17-year-old by the name of Bowen Byram, and what we had was a 4-line team that for much of the season, Jonathan, was just so unselfish. They did not care in the slightest who got the goal, who got the ice time, who got the power play time. All that mattered was winning. And that's exactly what that team did in spades. And then, I think from the trade deadline on, I think we lost just 4 games. And so we went into the playoffs. We won. We were the top team in the Western Conference. The Seattle Thunderbirds gave us a hell of a scare in round 1, but we were able to win. The Victoria Royals were just too injured in round 2, and we swept them. And is it a different series if they've got a few bodies? Probably, but I think the right team won that series. Round 3, Spokane. Game 2. We're down 2-0 in the game, and I think we might have 10 shots on goal through 2 periods. We're not playing very well. And Spokane just beat Everett. They had just beaten Portland, and they were a team to be reckoned with. And go into the 3rd period, and we get this really lucky goal. Like a bounce off a stanchion goal. Dawson Holt just taps it into the empty net. Okay, 2-1, we're on the board. Well, we scored 3 more goals in about a 3-minute span, and you've got this 5,000-seat arena called the Langley Event Center that's like awakened by this 2-1 goal. The 2-2 goal, they're roaring. 3-2, it's deafening. And 4-2, like you can't even hear yourself think. And we won game 2. We were up 2-0 in the series. We ended up winning that series in 5 games. And then, you pinch yourself. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to the league final. I've never even been out of the first round before in the playoffs in the WHL. And we all know how the league final went. I mean, the Prince Albert Raiders were up 3-1 in the series. We fought like hell to get back and force a 7th game. Game 7 goes to overtime. We had a power play in overtime, couldn't score. We hit a post in overtime, didn't score. And then Dante Hanoun, the lifelong thorn in the Vancouver Giants side, scores a goal, wins the championship for the Prince Albert Raiders. I'll never forget, before we went back to Prince Albert for game 6 or game 7, we were told, okay, guys, you're either packing for 2 days or 2 weeks. Because from there, you might be on a flight to Halifax for the Memorial Cup. And to this day, I mean, my heart breaks for the franchise, breaks for everybody involved, because we would have been a worthy winner had it gone down like that. Full marks to the Prince Albert Raiders. They were gracious winners, and I think there'll forever be a kinship between the community of Prince Albert, the Raiders, and the Giants because of that. I'm grateful to have been a part of it, but would have been nice to win.
And despite the way it ended, how significant was that for you personally, to be the voice of a run like that for the Giants? Because earlier on, you made reference to the history that you and your family have with the Giants. Once upon a time, your family was a billet family for the team, and I believe your dad has been a longtime volunteer at the arena. Despite the way it ended, and of course he would have loved to finish it off, But how cool was that, and how meaningful was that to be able to voice some of those moments for the Giants?
A total dream come true. One of those pinch me moments where, I mean, you grow up watching them, you grow up living with a couple of them. I remember running around the rink in a volunteer shirt, chaperoning Jack the Giant as a volunteer back in the really, really early days of the franchise. So then to all of a sudden be behind the microphone and being beside Bill Wilms in a broadcast booth in Prince Albert, and you're getting set to call Game 7. There's 300 people at the Langley Event Center that are watching from a banquet hall. There's, 2 days in my life, I don't think I've ever been more popular. My wedding and the day of Game 7. Like, you wouldn't believe the people that were coming out of the woodwork, with text messages and phone calls and just, good tidings and good wishes of support the day of Game 7. And, again, just really can't stress enough how thankful I am to, have received this opportunity. A fellow who I haven't mentioned in this conversation, who I owe so much to when it comes to the Giants, is a man by the name of Dale Sipe, who, when I was a grade 11 in high school and I was just looking to come to a rink and get to know the WHL, he'd give me tickets. And then, when I started practicing doing play-by-play into a tape recorder, he made sure I got in the building, and he made sure I had a program and a space up top in the Coliseum to go to and practice without, pissing anybody off. And then, I'll never forget, giving him a phone call that day saying, hey, I see the Giants are now looking for a broadcaster. Brendan Batchelor is going somewhere. Is it time? And when he said, yeah, Danny, I think it's probably time for you to come home. There's so many memories, there's so much history, and, to, wear the logo on my shirt and to proudly represent the organization, the way that I've been able to for the past 4 years, as their broadcaster. And then, beyond that, I mean, really just from the get-go, when they arrived in Vancouver, they've always played a part in my love for junior hockey. And I mean, I think back to today. I mean, here we are in a global pandemic, and, the Vancouver Giants are getting a chance to play this unprecedented season, hopefully once in a lifetime kind of season. But the support of the ownership and the support of everybody involved is, it's special. I'm grateful, extremely thankful, and I sincerely try every day not to take it for granted, because I know how lucky I truly am. And that's the plan, is to continue to do exactly that. And who knows what the future is going to hold, but I'm excited for it. And here's just hoping that we can all, stay safe and stay sane amidst all of this chaos that's going on in the outside world, and that before too long we can all be back at the rink together where we belong.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, you made mention earlier to your podcast that you're a part of. Just tell us a little bit more about that, the Voice and the Coach podcast. Who's that with? What's that all about, and where can we find it?
Yeah, well, the Voice and the Coach podcast was, the podcast is almost a year old, and that's crazy. So COVID's been good for something, I guess. Yeah, you know what? 2 summers ago, former Cougar head coach Mark Hollick and I were having a beer on his deck, and he kind of said to me, I think he was joking, he's like, you and I should start a podcast, Dan. We know lots of people. We got lots of stories. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, it's a lot of work. It'd be fun, but yeah, like, file that under the probably not going to happen column. And then all of a sudden COVID-19 hits, and you've got a lot of extra time on your hands and a lot of uncertainty. And then it's like, okay, well, what can I do to be as productive as possible? Well, the podcast idea came back to me, and I remembered, well, I can't do this without first asking Mark, because it was his idea. And sure enough, he said, yeah, like, why not? Let's give it a go. 3 days later, I'm over at his house with a bunch of cobbled up recording equipment, and episode 1 with Scott Gomez was born. So yeah, as we're chatting today, I think we've done about 37 episodes. We've got a couple of sponsors. We've even got a beer sponsor, which is great. And you know what? It's been cathartic. It's been a really nice thing to look forward to. And we've gotten a chance to speak to some really cool people. And I think the kind of peeling back the curtain, similar to what you're doing with your show, just kind of giving people a bit of a glimpse into life in the game and life into sports, has been a really, really cool hobby. And I think we have every plan on continuing for as long as people are going to continue to download and subscribe to us. So that's awesome. It's called The Voice and the Coach. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. I mean, we're available pretty much anywhere, but we've also got Twitter. We've also got an Instagram feed. So wherever you get your podcast, you can certainly tune in to the show. We appreciate every single click that we get.
And then 8 more Giants games this season. Where can we listen to you and Bill Wilms call the rest of the season for the Giants?
Yeah, you know what? You can hear us on Sportsnet 650. You can also hear us on CHL TV. It's going to come pretty fast and furious here, but we're looking forward to seeing what these Giants have for us here in the final handful of games. I mean, it's going to be an emotional ride towards the end. May 11th is fast approaching, but I think the coaches, the players, the staff, all of us are very focused on making sure that we all keep our heads held high, and we leave nothing out there to chance, because in 2 weeks, when we're all home again, it's going to be, okay, now what? You know, we're going to take the bubble for granted, even though at times it can be very difficult. But yeah, looking forward to the next 2 weeks and what lies ahead.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, Dan, again, thank you so much for your time tonight. We ran a few minutes over time. I hope you don't mind too much. But this was an absolute pleasure to spend a good hour with you and talk Giants and go through some of your journey, and as well catch up with Eric Florchak. So again, thanks so much for doing this, and send my best to Florzy and to Bill.
Shall do. An absolute pleasure, and just continued health and safety and good vibes to you, John, and everybody tuning in. And yeah, looking forward to some normalcy, hopefully before too long. But keep your head up, enjoy it, and again, just appreciate you thinking of me.
For sure. All right, we'll take one more break here as we say goodbye to Dan. I will be back with the final wrap up here after one more break. You're watching Behind the Mic on ASTV Productions. And once again, one more time, welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson back with you to wrap up the show, and it was a good one tonight. A lot of Vancouver Giants and WHL talk with Dan O'Connor, the play-by-play voice of the Vancouver Giants on Sportsnet 650, as well as Giants 20-year-old forward Eric Florchak, who is wrapping up his Western Hockey League career. We once again thank them one more time for their time tonight to speak with us. And once again, thanks to you for spending part of your Friday evening with us, wherever you have us tuned in from. Appreciate your viewership as always. If you missed part of this show or you want to go back to watch our archive. You can find all our previous shows at astvproductions.com. That's where everything lives. Behind the Mic, all of our other shows on ASTV, and our live game broadcasts. We'll be back with you next Friday, same time, same place, 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, here on astvproductions.com and Facebook with another conversation with a great sportscaster. So once again, for my guests, Dan O'Connor and Eric Florchuk, this is Jonathan Hodgson. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again next week.